Well, welcome everyone. I imagine we'll have a few people joining. There's about 32 people in this session at the moment, and so we might have a few more people joining in over the next few minutes. I'd like to welcome everyone to this first sort of topical session of the Rural PCN Forum. This is Building Change BC, Cornerstones in PCN. So just quick sort of housekeeping and welcome. My name is Beth DeMaio. I'm joining today from unceded Gitxsan territory of the Gitxsan Nation. I'm the chapter coordinator in Hazelton, and also have Carrera Teal and Christiane Kearns, my colleagues, supporting the sort of facilitation and note-taking and tech support for this session in the background. This session will run until about 12:15. So we're going to start with a presentation, and then there'll be lots of time for discussion and questions and dialogue following. I'm so pleased to introduce this topic and the presenters. A number of the presenters are sort of my neighbors in the Pacific Northwest Division of Family Practice, or they've been working really closely with the Pacific Northwest Division over the last few years around this work. So today we have with us Dr. Robert Boushel, Professor and Director for the School of Kinesiology at UBC. Laurie Flood, President, Metabolic Syndrome Canada. Dr. Greg Linton, who's a family physician. He's also the co-chair for Coast Mountain Primary Care Network and the board vice chair for the Pacific Northwest Division of Family Practice. Dr. Onuora Odoh, who's a family physician as well, and co-chair for the Houston Primary Care Network and board secretary for the Pacific Northwest Division. Also Charlene Webb, health director in Kitsumkalum and co-chair for the Coast Mountain Primary Care Network. So welcome everyone, and I will pass it over to the five of you for your presentation.
Thanks very much, Beth. It's Greg Linton here in Terrace. And just before I get started, I would like to recognize the unceded territory from which I am currently presenting, that being from the Tsimshian territory, and specifically the land of the Kitsumkalum. We have a number of presenters here this morning. And so before I get started, I just want to make sure that we have Charlene on the line, because we didn't have her a few minutes ago. So Beth, do you see her on the group here now?
Yes, Charlene is here with us.
Excellent. Okay, well then I'll get going. And welcome to everybody who's joined today for our talk on the Building the Change BC Cornerstones in PCNs. So first off then is our disclosure slide that all presenters have no actual or potential conflict of interest in relation to this program or presentation. And I'd just like to say that the groups that are recognized in this discussion today are in the bottom of this slide, that being the Kitsumkalum Band, Metabolic Syndrome Canada, the UBC School of Kinesiology, the Pacific Northwest Division of Family Practice, and Change BC. And when we're talking about some of these things, because some of you won't have heard, for example, of Metabolic Syndrome Canada or Change BC, stay tuned, you'll hear more about that. But these are not-for-profit societies. So just to give you a little bit more background on this disclosures slide. Thanks. Next, please. So I've given you a territory acknowledgement from where I am, but I'd just like to point out that within British Columbia here, the black rectangle that you see in the top left-hand corner is actually the Pacific Northwest Division of Family Region, in which there are 7 First Nations represented with over 25 communities, Indigenous communities as well, noticing that we have the land that extends from basically the middle of the province in Houston over to the far western edge, including Haida Gwaii, and from the middle of the Northwest, being Kitimat and Terrace, up to the Yukon border. So it's a large area. And as you see, the number of First Nations here, 25, that are represented in this territory. So a quick acknowledgement to all of the First Nations communities that are represented in the Pacific Northwest. So the objectives for this talk: first, what is metabolic syndrome? Number two, why is this important to your practice? Number three, what is the Change program? Number four, introducing Change BC and our results. And fifth, Change BC as a cornerstone of primary care networks. So first off, I think it's helpful, just as a reminder, just to let people understand the topic today. What is metabolic syndrome? And you see on the left, there are 5 different parameters here that we're looking at, starting with, in no particular order, visceral obesity, then insulin resistance, hypertension, high triglycerides, and low HDL cholesterol. So these 5 parameters make up the metabolic syndrome, and it's any 3 of these put together will give you the diagnosis of metabolic syndrome, which of course is both a precursor to type 2 diabetes and also a risk for cardiovascular disease. And you see on the right-hand side, within these parameters, we have specific levels. So the high blood pressure we're discussing here is greater than 130 on 85, or receiving medication for their blood pressure. A high blood glucose level, so greater than 5.6, again, or receiving medication for this. High triglycerides, greater than 1.7 millimoles per liter, or receiving meds. Low HDL cholesterol, less than 1 millimole per liter in men, or less than 1.3 millimoles per liter in women, recognizing that the gender differences here, as well as the gender differences seen with large waist circumference in the guidelines for men, greater than 102 centimeters, and in women, greater than 88 centimeters. And the ranges vary according to ethnicity. So why is it important to be discussing metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes? Well, over 1.5 million people in BC have diabetes or metabolic syndrome. And this is probably kind of a cautious or low threshold representation of the numbers. And it could be even closer to 2 million people in BC that have diabetes or metabolic syndrome. And when we're looking at the costs to the healthcare system, when we're talking about the annual BC cost of diabetes alone, it's over $2 billion. In the healthcare system, 509 million, and patient out-of-pocket costs. When you just look at the cost of medications, you're looking at anywhere from $800 to $4,700 a year. So there are significant costs that are incurred both by the healthcare system and patients that we are hoping to have some impact on. Of course, now diabetes contributes to 40% of myocardial infarctions seen, 30% of strokes, 50% of kidney failure requiring dialysis, and 70% of non-traumatic limb amputations. And it is the leading cause of vision loss in Canada. In BC's Pacific Northwest, we also have the largest incidence of pediatric obesity in BC and in Canada. So when we're looking at diabetes, you can see at the top there the importance of all of the health implications, but also when you're looking at pediatric obesity, you're looking at a bit of a precursor to all that diabetes implies in the future. So this is not just a problem now with diabetes and metabolic syndrome, but it's an up and coming problem for all of us, given that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg here with the pediatric obesity numbers that we're quoting you. And excuse me, for relevance to all of you in family practice, in the Pacific Northwest, 45% of patients we're looking at now have either metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes as of August 2021. So this is no small problem for all of us. Excuse me. So thus we have with these problems identified that there's a need to be addressing this, and this is where the CHANGE program comes in. So CHANGE refers to the Canadian Health Advanced by Nutrition and Graded Exercise. And I'm not sure if Laurie Flood is actually responsible for that name, but I'm going to tip my hat to her for that one. And the CHANGE program looks at lifestyle interventions. And these are lifestyle interventions that work. So what makes the CHANGE program more effective at reversing metabolic syndrome than other diets or workout plans? Specifically, excuse me, your family doctor is in the middle of all of this and an anchor for this program. There is a team approach used, and you'll learn more about this team here this morning. And it is very patient-centered with a personalized diet and exercise plan. Also, there's gradual intervention here rather than wholesale changes from the beginning. And there's close follow-up for over 12 months. And this is something that's a little different than basically anything else we encounter in family practice, because we have this longitudinal follow-up that is an important cornerstone of this lifestyle intervention program that is CHANGE. So a busy slide here, bear with me. It's a program overview of what CHANGE looks like for a patient and in your practice. So if we start over at the left-hand side, we see the family doctor is primary to this and weaves over across the right-hand side of the slide here throughout this 12-month program as the blue line. And at the start of it, the family doctor is registering the patient, and we're reviewing blood work. We're encouraging the patient to adopt the program. We are looking at medications, and just to let everyone know that the important, or one of the important roles here for the family physician is that often in getting through this entire one-year program, there will be medication discontinuations that are happening here. So there's adjusting of pharmacotherapy that occurs throughout this time. And there's also involvement here at time zero with registered dietitians and kinesiologists. So those people, as part of this team, are also developing goals for the next 12 months, implementing individualized CHANGE plans to reverse metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. So you'll see with the numbers occurring across the middle of the slide, 1 to 12, those are the months of the year. And you'll also see that there, for the first 3 months, is very intense follow-up with the dietitians and kinesiologists on a weekly basis for follow-up modifying plans and goals of diet and exercise. And then for the last 4 to 12 months, there's monthly follow-up visits with the dietitian and kinesiologists. There's a review of blood work that's occurring regularly with the family doctors quarterly. And you'll also see that the arrow extends beyond 12 months because we have found that the benefits of the change program will go beyond the 12 months that you see represented on the screen here. And we can talk more about that in the discussion afterwards. So we have the Change British Columbia team that is different from the Change program that I have just described to you. And the Change British Columbia team is represented by all of these different groups you see on the bottom of this slide that I had introduced to you at the beginning of the talk. So in this case, Change BC has as part of it rural family physician leaders. And we first adopted the Change program in the Pacific Northwest in 2017. And we had a 1-year pilot program to see how we could implement the Change program in BC in a rural setting. Because prior to this, Change had been a program that was developed in Ontario and Quebec and Alberta. And so in BC, the Pacific Northwest Division of Family Practice was the first division to bring it to our province, but it hadn't been operating in rural settings prior to coming to BC. So this was a bit of a change for the Change program, if you will. And the results were remarkable. So the question was, can metabolic syndrome be reversed, and specifically in the rural setting? And our results showed that 32.4% of patients who completed the initial Change program in BC reversed their metabolic syndrome. And this was higher than what we saw across Canada traditionally. And we're still sorting out exactly why it is that the rural communities in the Pacific Northwest have done better than the average. But as you'll see here, breaking it down a little bit, remembering that metabolic syndrome is made up of 5 different parameters, you can see that of the people that completed the program, there was a 78% improvement in blood pressure readings, a 55% improvement in total cholesterol, 52% improvement in triglyceride values, 64% improvement in blood glucose levels, improvement in waist circumference of 64%, improvement in nutritional knowledge at 93%, improvement in VO2 max, which was something that was estimated as opposed to actually measured, with 81% improvement, and improvement in aerobic fitness at 86%. And when you look at the cardiovascular risk ProCam score with a prediction of the 10-year cardiovascular risk based on risk factors like a history of MI, diabetes, or high cholesterol, there was a 67% improvement in these scores for the people who completed the Change program in the Pacific Northwest. So, Colleen, I think I'm close to handing over here. but there are 5 Change BC Cornerstones in the primary care network development and optimization. Number 1 being the family physician, number 2 being the team involved, number 3, the patient and community focus, number 4, the cultural relevance of our program, and number 5, the personalized, gradual, and long-term change over 12 months for lasting results. So Cornerstone number 1 is the family physician. And as I described to you earlier, we are identifying our patients at the outset for inclusion in the program, and we're following them through the entire 12 months. There are often medication changes to be made because people's blood pressures are improving, their blood sugars are improving, cholesterol values are improving. We're monitoring those throughout this program on a quarterly basis. And so here you see represented one of the group who started initially with our Change BC core, and that's Dr. Morkel and Smithers. So the family physician, in essence, is the quarterback here. Together with the kinesiologist and dietitian and other healthcare providers, this is what makes up the team. Change BC is a customized, prescribed primary care support to help patients to reverse metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. And I should say here as well that we have adapted the Change BC program a little bit to include both the preventative side here, which is identifying those with metabolic syndrome, but also including those with type 2 diabetes and those who have had myocardial events. So when we first started out in our infancy with Change, we were looking specifically at metabolic syndrome, and now we've widened the spectrum to include metabolic syndrome and diabetes, as well as those people that have had some myocardial event or had stents placed. So we're looking at both the prehab, if you will, and the rehab side of things. There's careful monitoring of lab values and adjustment and stopping of meds, as I've described, for metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes, as we're reversing some of these conditions.
Are you going to introduce Dr. Odoh?
Oh, yes, there we go. So next up here, because this was a team that was involved in this whole process and continues to be, I'm going to hand you over to next on the team, Dr. Odoh from Houston. And I'm hoping Dr. Odoh has unmuted.
Oh, hi. I think Dr. Boushel is one that is going to take it from here. That is slide number 20.
Okay.
Thank you. Yep, I will take it from here. Thank you, Dr. Linton. I'm Robert Boushel. I'm joining you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people at UBC in Vancouver, and delighted to talk a little bit about the next part of the talk, starting with the Cornerstone 2, which is the team. And as we found with the Pacific Northwest Division and with the Change program, a team is critical for the success of this program and for the benefit of patients. And a team of diverse disciplines and perspectives and expertise, and also the importance of adequately resourcing the program through this team approach. So next slide, Colleen. and exemplified by this picture here. So we think of the team of professionals that converge to make this program successful, where everyone is a champion of the program, working together, communicating, bringing insightful ideas to bring new resources, ideas, being flexible with different approaches, and also closely working with communities, focused on the individual, but also considering the value and power of engaging community. And you can see on the top just a Zoom capture of our Friday morning meetings that bring together students, researchers, physicians, practice coaches, and administrators, and everyone really excited to be part of this team, and that makes it work. What also is important is bringing a research lens to what we do in change. And I'm an exercise physiologist, really interested in the physiological effects of exercise and the benefit for health. This is a busy slide, but I think it captures a little bit of the profound effects of exercise on physiological and biochemical responses with exercise that impacts overall health in a very significant way. And as we embark upon this program, bringing a research lens to understand the pathways, the metabolic and organ system adaptations that occur with exercise is really important to guide prescription and also to monitor health benefits. So just for example, we know that with acute exercise, if you put someone on a bike and have them do robust physical activity, cycling, we know that about 600 proteins in skeletal muscle alone are activated. And these proteins and enzymes are inducing physiological changes in the body. Some of these are acute, and some of them are chronic. So we know that some of these signals that are released are activating genes that encode for proteins that remodel various organ systems. And there's a vast communication network that occurs through signaling molecules between organs, and this is responsible for coordinated adaptations that are health promoting. And we know that exercise, for example, by itself can increase glucose uptake as it relates to type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome, bypassing the normal pathways for requiring insulin. And so some of these factors, these responses, are really important to know to bring the knowledge base to prescribing exercise and understanding the benefits. Next slide. And here's just one example showing the depiction of a skeletal muscle and the release of some of these molecules into the circulation and their profound effects. And here I show interleukin-6, what we typically think of as an inflammatory marker, is actually released from skeletal muscle during contraction. That has the effect of inhibiting inflammatory adipokines associated with overweight or obesity, in this case, inhibiting TNF-alpha. IL-6 also activates GLP, or glucagon-like peptide, from the intestine. That then has the downstream effect of stimulating insulin secretion at a higher level at any glucose concentration. And so you can see the powerful cascade of new pathways elucidated through the scientific study of exercise that have clinical benefit. Next slide. What we're also bringing to our discussions and approaches in change is understanding the importance of traditional lifestyle for health, and specifically in rural communities and remote communities when we think of exercise and we think historically of health, traditional lifestyle really has a powerful impact on conferring health. And I show some images here from some research we've done examining the impact on health and the physiological responses with traditional land-based physical activity and traditional foods and the impact on health. And so you can see here a picture of skiers, and you can see some pictures of a community from a region in the north of Greenland where we studied the effect of traditional lifestyle on health. Next slide. And just as an example, what we showed was that in individuals in an Inuit community who are known or call themselves hunters, so they live completely from the land, hunting, fishing, gathering food from the land, and who are outdoors most of the daily hours, being physically active. We were looking at their ability to oxidize substrates and utilize fat. And we compared that group of traditional lifestyle members to those also in their community who are living more of on a westernized diet, and compared those to Western Europeans who were untrained and then skied for 40 days to improve their fitness level. And so a unique finding here was that in the hunters, those living a traditional lifestyle, their mitochondrial oxidative capacity to oxidize lipids and clear lipids was really remarkably high, and higher than Western Europeans who skied for 42 days for 6 hours a day. So just one sort of highlight of the importance and the value of traditional land-based physical activity and traditional foods on health. Next slide. So with a research lens and experience, and with monitoring of patients and responses to physical activity, we're beginning to understand the powerful effects of exercise on many organ systems and the benefits for health. And finally, discovering new pathways. Next, Colleen. And even the interesting finding that some factors we typically think that are responses that reside in distinct organs, for example, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This factor, this protein, is actually expressed in the muscle when you exercise, and it's released into the circulation. And we now know that even after an acute bout of exercise, that brain-derived neurotrophic factor releases from the muscle and increases after exercise. And this has been shown to be important for neurogenesis in the brain. And other factors also that may impact mental health are induced by exercise, molecular signals that are inducing positive effects biologically that influence mental health. So with this approach, bringing a research lens to the team-based approach to patient care, individualized care, and engaging communities, this is the frontier for us, brings a lot of excitement to what we do collectively, and looking to expand our programming towards communities, land-based physical activity, and traditional foods. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Odoh.
Thank you, Dr. Boushel. And yeah, I'm going to continue with this slide, which is the cornerstone number 3. And this is talking about, change BC being patient and community focused, which is pretty important in primary care. So the program is actually tailored to be a patient focus in the sense that the patient is at the center of the care. And the care plan is developed around patients to be personalized, considering other aspects of lifestyle in these patients. So, and this is important because the family physician of the patient that knows the patient before the program is there to support the patient through the program, and is also there to be with the patient after the program for sustainability, and just to make sure that the impact that is made by the program is being maintained. So patients are being assessed, by the three care providers, which are the kinesiologist, an exercise expert, a dietitian, which is an expert in nutrition, and a patient we assess, the patient, health condition and other social determinants of life, putting into consideration things that may be able to limit the patient participation in the program, such as the patient job, the patient, family setting, are coming up with a program that is quite adaptable to patient other things, and being able to support the patient through the 12 months. Another thing that is important here is that Change BC is community adaptable. Different communities have different, weather and environment, condition. So which is important, on the land-based, care that Dr. Boushel talked about. Winter season, summer season, the duration varies, and the level of exercise and the type of exercise being, received during these seasons are different. And this is also an important factor about the program being 12 months, because it's able to cover the 4 or 3 seasons that are seen in most communities. So we are not looking at, an exercise program that is focused on, being in a gym and spending 30 minutes or 20 minutes. We are looking at other things that patient can do in his environment, in his local community, like walking, going for fruit picking, fishing, skiing. So we consider those as part of the exercise. So the program is really looking at, the patient as a person and, the effect of the patient community in the care. And this is a cornerstone or a base, a foundation of primary care. A patient being situated in his community, getting the required care that is adapted, to his lifestyle and environment of his community, and having his family physician being at the center of the care to provide care during the 12 months and, after the 12 months period. Next slide. So we were able to evaluate, the experience of the participant, as well as, the impact of this program in the participants of the program, within the 2 years after the program. So Dr. Linton talked about the clinical impact of the program, which is very nice. But we are not focusing only on the clinical impact. We want to know how the patients that participated in this program, what do they have to say? What is the feedback? What is the experience like? So we had a survey, within in the first 2 years after the program to get some information about this. And 100% of the participants agreed that the program was relevant to them. 100% also agreed that the program helped them to understand their health issues, which is important because some patients just know that they have diabetes or that they're obese. They don't have detailed information on what the health issue is and how it's related to their lifestyle and other things. So this is what Change BC does. Because you have, the key players in the care provision of these patients involved. There is, education on, exercise, education on diet, and education on medication and other things, that the family doctor supports. So 100% agree that the program was able to make them to understand their health issues. 80% agree that the program increased their knowledge of their health support available to them. Some may not have known what is the role of kinesiologist in healthcare. So this was an eye-opener to them that there's an exercise expert that can help you understand and prescribe, the appropriate exercise that is in line with your healthcare. And also having a phone call or face-to-face, appointment with a dietitian that takes time to explain things to you from the basics. We found it to be very important and is well supported in the program. 61% agree that attending sessions with other participants, other patients, added value to them. We talk about, peer support. This program is at a center of supporting peer support. Hearing from your co-participants, what is the experience? What worked for the person? So this is where the community plays a role. So we are able to get patients that have, like mind and similar, health condition together to start to discuss on how they can help themselves and how they can support themselves. So 61% of them really say that, oh, this program was helpful in this aspect. And 100% agree that seeing a dietitian and kinesiologist alongside with their family physician added value. This is the key interprofessional team playing in healthcare that's being talked about. This is something that is in a topical discussion, having interprofessional team involved in patient care. And this is also the basics of the PCN that we are all talking about. Change BC have it factor in the program, and you can see that 100% of those that participated really agreed that this is a way to go. Next slide. And this slide has information on individual patient comments about the program, and these are the patients that participated in the program. So the Change PC program was truly life-changing. This is one of the comments that we got from participants. Another participant notes that the Change PC program helped me to feel much better about my body and health, which is important. And it's not just, that you have the providers there. I think, and a good aspect of it is the relationship and the level of the communication information that the participant actually got. I feel 10 years younger after Change BC program. And this is an amazing, comment. And you can imagine that, a life-changing program, and was able to turn somebody, to feeling 10 years younger. And looking at this, if your sugar level is controlled, if your blood pressure is controlled, if you're able to lose, a bunch of weight, definitely you are going to feel much more better. So this is confirmed, by the comments that I feel 10 years younger than I was before I started the program. And the last comment here said that I felt supported throughout the whole process with consistent communication between me and the 3 streams of healthcare professionals. That's where the information, which I've mentioned, is very important. Information is key and it's a bedrock, to healthcare. And Change BC is one program that makes sure that this is well, taken care of. Next slide. So looking at this slide, you will see, different, communities with different, background colors. The green background are the 4 communities. We started this program where we piloted the program in 2017, 2018. And the brown background are the communities we are working, to, expand the programs to. So the program started in the communities of Smithers, Houston, Terrace, and Marset. And it was really anchored, by the family physician in these communities. The family physician that knows the community very well, family physician that know their patient and able to assess the patient and talk to the patient and get patient involved in the program, and that are still there to support this patient few years after the program. The family physician that understand, the weather and, the geographical, aspect of the community, when it's time for skiing, how to factor skiing as a part of exercise, the type of food that is available, whether this is an indigenous community or not. So those are the family physicians that are involved in the program. And we have actually expanded our web, to those other communities. Not just, communities, we also expanded, the component of the program to involve mental health, because we have really found out that mental health has a lot to do with chronic diseases. And we also found out that, the components of metabolic syndrome are major contributors to cardiovascular diseases. People come down with stroke and, and heart attack. So we are working so hard to make sure that even people that ended up with, complication before or not participating in the program, that they can also be included in this program. And we are also working hard, to make sure that, the partnership with other organizations and other, stakeholders are being expanded. So Change BC, is started in 4 communities and with limited programs, and now, we are expanding. Next slide. The cornerstone number 4, at this point, I'm going to leave it to Charlene. She's going to talk, about this very cornerstone. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Charlene Webb, the Health Director for Kitsumkalum. My traditional name is Niskal. I come from the House of Spokes. I'm a carrier woman from the Fort St. James area. I come from the House of Spokes. That's our traditional name for our Gittin Dam Lachabu. I have 15 siblings, and I carry the name that's passed down to me from my mother, as we are a matrilineal system. I live and breathe in the Tsimshian unceded territories of the Tsimshian Nation. I'm married into the community. I've been working in the healthcare field. Oh my God, I'm gonna say how old I am. No, I'm not. And for 20 years, I've been working in the health care field. I had the privilege of starting in the interior and working my way through and finding our way home here to Terrace. So with the support, the pictures you're about to see in this presentation is supported through Arlene Roberts. Mrs. Arlene Roberts works for the Indian Residential School Survivors Society here at a Terrace. Our traditional foods, where do I start? If we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you, Colleen. When we start harvesting our food, you will see from the wheel in front of you the seasons. What you don't see in the background is, if you're looking at this wheel, this is how we harvest off our kale, also known as our land. So what we're doing in winter, it takes 3 more seasons to come back to the winter gathering. That gives it 3 seasons to rejuvenate itself, to rebuild itself. And so we start in the north section or the south, and we would harvest in that area, then we move to the north. I say it takes 4 seasons to come back, because we'll start in the south to gather, then we make our way around. So that by the time we come back, it's year 4. And I'm sharing this for a purpose. So it gives that opportunity for the berries and the plants and the roots to rebuild so that we get the best value out of it. That's why our seasons are broken up the way you see it presented in front of you. But that's how we lay how we harvest off the lands. Thank you. The next slide. And when we harvest from, when we pick and harvest our plants, it is from the best value of the plant when it's most alive. I gotta get where you are, my friend. We're at the Hooligans. Oh, that's why. I am so sorry. You guys are making me nervous. Thank you. So the hooligans start we start harvesting it in January through to March here in the Tsimshian territory. There we go. The hooligans, when they're traveling up to the Kitsumkalum territory, we're 3 kilometers just outside of Terrace, just to help give you an idea. Along with the hooligans come the sea lions and the eagles and the crows. And so the benefits of harvesting at that time is not only focused on the hooligans. It was used, all our traditional foods were used for trading and bartering along what we call the grease trail. And the grease trail would go from the Tsimshian territory all the way up to Taltan, over to the interior into Takla Nation, and as far as Kodata in the northeast. On the grease trails, there would be like cellars built, and foods were stored in there. so that when people were traveling on common land, they called it, they would gather what they need, but they would leave something when they take. So the Ooligans was a very rich food that was, it's hard for me to translate this from my language, but the bartering system, it was like the gold, I guess, because the value and the impacts it has on our diet has helped us. So it was a hot commodity. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. So along this grease trail, we would trade and barter our traditional foods. Can we move to the next slide, please? How the food, oh, I keep grabbing the wrong mouse, sorry. The benefits of having just Ooligans as a piece is our vitamin E, vitamin K, vitamin D, and vitamin A. Vitamin E, okay, a little disclaimer here. When you look at the telt hands and the Niska, they are very tall. And the reason being is because of the diet they eat from the fish, and that's the Ooligans, because it strengthens the bones and helps your bones grow. So, and you look at us carriers in the interior, we didn't have an abundance of traditional seafood all the time, so we're not that tall, I might say. So a little disclaimer there. So that's why I'm only 5'2". The benefits that we have from eating these foods not only help with our growth, but to manage and help us maintain good health. As far back as early as 1950s, our elders were not facing diabetes because of the diet, because of the traditional ways of harvesting. And it begins from birth to death. How we introduce our food is at different levels. So the image of the baby, this was planned, how and what the pregnant woman eats before she even gets pregnant, so that she has a healthy baby. Sorry, vitamin K. The vitamin K would help with our blood, as you're aware. Infants get a shot of vitamin K at birth, but our traditional foods also gives them that vitamin K to kickstart and to move their blood. And it's traditionally a child is not allowed to touch the ground until they're 1 year old, because that's how precious we hold them in our culture, is that everything is done for them, from diet to how they walk. And typically what would happen in the First Nations community, the first born grandchild, be it a male or female, was raised by the grandparents. And the reason for that is that the knowledge of the grandparents was passed to that generation. That was our role as grandparents, is that we carry and pass this knowledge on to that generation, because that was expected of us as grandparents, because our parents pass that knowledge on to our children. So that's why, well, when you look at the life cycle and who's all involved in the child's life and upbringing, is our roles and responsibilities. So traditionally, the firstborn grandchild is always raised by the grandparents. The vitamin D, granted, we are very blessed with sun in our area, not so much with our relatives up in the Nunavik area. Not only do we look at vitamin E's and healthy weight gain for the babies, but it's critical important for the expecting moms or those that are coming of age to become a parent. Their diet, what we introduce to them at an early preteens and leading into a young lady will determine how we can support them with their diet throughout their pregnancy. And when they're pregnant, there are certain foods that they cannot eat. I'm not sure if familiar with, I should have brought some in, but Labrador tea, and it's called Lademus jet, okay? Labrador tea is, you bring your water to the boil with the leaves inside it, and you let it simmer for about 10, 15 minutes. Labrador tea does a couple of things. It will help like flush out your system, but it's also a natural laxative. So therefore, pregnant women were not allowed to have Labrador tea because of the possible weight loss that they will experience. So our diet played a very key role into the foods we drank and eat and how we harvest it. Women who are in their moon time are not allowed out on the land to harvest any of the plants, wildlife, or traditional hunting and gathering. And the reason being is that when women are in their moon time, that it's very strong medicine that they have because they can give life. That's why they say women are very strong. They have the power to give life. So when we're looking at harvesting and gathering from the previous wheel to how many hands make light work. So these teachings are taught to us growing up so that when it comes time to harvest and when we recognize that the ladies in her moon time, it's not frowned upon that they're not helping. So therefore, we make sure that those young ladies are fed properly, taken care of, given the proper teas to help them through the process during their moon time. In the interior, I'll talk a little bit about the interior on that. In the interior, we would have huts or oh, it's so hard for me to translate it from my language. So Benny Hulo take it, think gay. What we would do in the interior, and that's Prince George, Fort St. James, Vanderhoof, a little bit of McLeod Lake, not all the way in, is we built these huts out of clay, and they were dug in, and the young ladies were housed in there, and the older ladies would take care of them, tend to them, and get them food. And this was a sacred area that men could not enter, that they would be on the perimeter to protect them from wildlife because they are in their moon time. They are at risk of a wildlife coming because of the scent of blood. So why am I sharing this? Because this is how critical our elders and our cultural teachings and our foods were to the birth of a child, to prepare for a child and the ladies during their moon time. And we'll talk a little bit about the vitamin A, strengthening teeth, bones, and eyes, and fighting off infection. We would, I've been looking through my little cheat sheet here. About infections, and we have a number of teas that we will help, that can and do help when we do have infections. Vitamin A, how we get it into our infants is through our diet. Is through our, it starts during pregnancy and eating a healthy diet so that the baby does have a healthy birth weight. So I'll talk just, I'll end this little piece here about how the importance of the traditional foods. We're very careful to what kind of foods we give the pregnant women and the babies, because some of them, like I said, is a natural laxative, and some of it is just too strong that their immune system cannot handle it yet. So if you can imagine, with each stage of our life, we are given introduced to new foods, just like how we would take a baby and introduce them from pablum to formula to and so on, right? That's how our traditional foods were introduced to the babies. Fish was one of the very first foods that were introduced to babies because it helped build our bones. It helped. We didn't give them canned. I think my children, I have two, when I was a child, my mom didn't give me pablum or that jarred baby food. I was given fish and moose meat and bear meat and beaver meat in small, very, so I wasn't choking on it. I don't know how to translate that. So it's how we were introduced to these foods leading up into our old age. We don't like saying old age. As we mature, we're introduced to different foods. Kinesiology, for example, is given to women going into menopause. So why I'm sharing this is because each stage of our life, we are introduced to different foods and the benefits of the medication. And we're mindful that what it does to our body. And that's a key to introduce it when we introduce it at the right time, the right age. I know I said a lot there. Thank you. We'll move to the next slide. Oh, so as you can see from the image, I love the image on your bottom right. This is the hooligans. This is wind-dried hooligans. As you can see, the Russians have done this over the years, and in India as well. So this isn't this is very there we go. This is very worldwide to how and what we harvest and the benefits that we get from each of them. So January to March, we are collecting hooligans here in the bottom right-hand corner. You will see the hooligans, and they would have hooligan camps. And I'll talk a little bit about this part here, the roles and the responsibilities of the Klansmen. So when we look at the clans, when you look at First Nations communities, take away the image you have of a reserve, please. Just hear me out and just give me a minute. Okay, I talk with my hands a lot too, something I get excited about. So now we have our traditional ways. We have what we call our house. I belong to the House of Spokes. That means he's the head of our clan of Lachabu, also known as the Wolf Clan. So I belong to the House of Spokes, and in there everybody has a role, from a carpenter to a midwife to parenting to harvest, a hunter, a gatherer, a fisherman, and all these roles. We all have a role, and we're all expected, but we're taught what is expected of us. So when we look at the House of Spokes, I'll use that for example, because that's where I come from, the House of Spokes. Each of us have a role, and we have a KO that we gather from, so that the killer whales or the frog or the ravens don't come into that area and harvest from our area. We respected each other. That was what we called Indian law. We respected each other's KO. I'm teaching you a little bit of Tsimshian and carrier. So there's going to be a test after, guys, so please listen. Okay, so we have our house, and each of our structures, we have our roles and responsibilities from birth to death. And with that, what we're taught, male and female are given the same opportunity to hunt and to gather, and to how we harvest and prepare the hooligan grease. So in the images, I'm just trying to set a tone for a little bit for the next picture. Everybody had a role, as this image here. This is an image that was shared with us from Mrs. Arlene Roberts, who works for the Indian Residential School Survivor Society. In the NAS, they had their hooligan camps. And this image here that was the role and the responsibility of the females. And there's a reason why. This is your test. The reason why we use the elders to make this medicine is, like I said before, women who are in their moon time, they're too strong. They can't touch the medicine. So that's why I explained all the stuff about coming of age and moon time and women. So the role of the elderlies in our customs she is making Ulugan grease is also an Indian medicine. Everybody, the moment she quits working in the smokehouse or out on the land, pulling the net or setting the net or preparing the wild game, that's the moment we start losing her. Not only does diet play a role in how healthy we are, but how active we are. Our elders were never still. Our elders were always busy. It's my generation where we're not as busy as our elders were. My husband's late grandmother was 95 years old when we lost her to a UTI. 95 years old. She never let us cut firewood for her smokehouse. She never let us process her fish for her. She did it all till the day she entered into the hospital. So the reason I shared with you about coming of age and the roles and responsibilities, and I ask you, if you're going to take Indian medicine, please don't buy it at farmer's market. Don't buy it on the shelf at Overweighty or a health food store. Traditionally, our Indian medicine is made for a specific person. And a true medicine person will know you're coming and will make exactly what you need for your body. So we don't, what this lady is doing here, we don't mass produce it. It's made for specific people, and the Ulugan grease is made for specific purposes, to barter, to share at a settlement feast, and to use as part of Indian medicine. So how we use the Ulugan grease is like getting gold. For us, that is the goal. That is winning the lottery. Ulugan grease and bear grease. So I'll give you a little secret about bear grease. Because I'm from the interior, this is how we harvest the bear grease. We take the stomach lining of the moose, and when we harvest and scrape the fat off of the bear, and we render it down, just like what they're doing here, is that they're rendering the Ulugan grease down. The aroma could just knock a horse over. We know it's good medicine then. So we render it down, and then we would pour the bear grease into the stomach lining of the moose. And then we would throw dried berries in there. And then our hunters would take a piece, cut a piece off and put it on their pack, and they would go out when they're out hunting and harvesting, because we can't carry wild meat. The men can't carry wild meat, thank you, when they are out hunting and gathering, because the animals will pick up the scent. So the Ulugan grease, the same scenario. We pour berries in there, and they would take it on their journeys on the grease trail or out when they're gathering food. I know I said a lot there. This image here, it just fills my heart with pride, knowing that we still honor our elders, we still take their knowledge, and they support us with the work that we need to do to carry on for the next generation. So my parents, unfortunately, I lost my dad when he was 52 of a massive heart attack. He made sure that we learned our traditional ways and our language. We were never allowed to be raised on the reserve. We weren't seen as Indian, but we weren't seen, and the non-First Nations didn't call us Indians, and the Indians would call us white, so we were considered half-breeds. But that didn't stop our elders from teaching us, from carrying and exposing us to this. Like beaver meat. We cannot give beaver meat to a pregnant woman because it's too rich and too high. We cannot give a pregnant woman Ladima Labrador tea, because it's like a flush. You want to do a cleanse, you have like 4 cups of Labrador tea in one day. That'll clean your system out. So I know I said a lot, and thank you. we could move to the next one. I thank you all for just listening, and I hope you all spike some interest and take away that that reserve image and look at us as a house and the roles and responsibilities that each of us carry. Thank you. Masis Nachalia in gay seats, Muditi. In my language, I ask the angels to watch all over you, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Charlene, you're a hard act to follow. Thank you. Oh man, Colleen, you got to move on to the next slide. I was just joking about Dr. Fishy. Thanks. So you'll see then with our fifth cornerstone here of the change program that is personalized, it's gradual, long-term change over 12 months. And just to comment a little bit, initially, when we brought the change program to the Pacific Northwest, we did not have incorporated into it some of the cultural relevance that Charlene has just shared with you. And so in our next phase, this is one of the major things we're hoping to establish in the Pacific Northwest is that understanding that a large portion of the population here is Indigenous, and we need to account for that in the exercise and dietary changes we're hoping to instill. So again, that's part of the personalized and gradual program that we're looking to instill over 12 months. Next slide, please. So I would like to, at this point, introduce Laurie Flood, who is the president of Metabolic Syndrome Canada, and she can give you a further understanding of how the change program in Canada and BC in particular has some relevance here.
Thanks, Greg. Unmuted. The goal of Metabolic Syndrome Canada was to create an intervention that worked. We worked with a lot of doctors and health professionals, and we wanted to introduce this change program, as we named it. I didn't name it, Dr. Gigi Boy did, but we want to introduce the change program all across Canada. So that's the only goal of Metabolic Syndrome, is to help make Canadians healthy. And one of the things that we learned in our journey implementing the change program in communities across Canada is the importance of partnerships. And the Pacific Northwest Division of Family Practice is a real highlight for us at Metabolic Syndrome Canada. While we work with leading health experts across the country and a lot of the universities, we collect metrics constantly to evaluate and share best practices. But this focus on adapting for success is second to none. And I think Charlene really gave you a sense of some of the work that they're doing. So we put together this short, okay, not so short video to spread the word. So please enjoy.
One in 5 Canadians suffer from the most pervasive health crisis of our time, metabolic syndrome. You may have heard about its 5 underlying conditions that lead to 43% of deaths in Canada each year. Family doctors can detect it early, and with the right support, reverse the risks. The Pacific Northwest Division of Family Practice is determined to eliminate metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes from our population. Every 3 minutes, another British Columbian is diagnosed with metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes. And while pharmaceuticals can manage symptoms, diet and exercise are the most effective treatment in avoiding catastrophic health events. The Change program works for all of the underlying conditions of metabolic syndrome simultaneously and reverses the damage before it's too late. Approximately 1.5 million people in BC have diabetes or pre-diabetes, and this number is expected to grow by 35% over the next 10 years. Diabetes contributes to 40% of heart attacks, 30% of strokes, 50% of kidney failure requiring dialysis, 70% of non-traumatic lower limb amputations, and is the leading cause of vision loss. Individuals continue to struggle with selecting programs they can trust to improve their health. Family physicians in the Pacific Northwest are leading the way in implementing the Change program in BC and reducing the incidence of metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. Prescribing the program gives patients a dedicated team of medical, exercise, and nutrition experts in a customized evidence-based program. Regular assessments review medical, exercise, and nutritional progress so patients and their health team work together at improving health.
As a family physician, this program is extraordinary. It allows people to examine their lifestyle with an exercise therapist, a dietitian, and their family physician. It's customized for personal needs and lasts for a full year, supporting lifelong changes.
Change BC started when the Pacific Northwest family physicians observed about 40% of their patients had symptoms of metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes. After piloting the Change program in 2018, and with a spark of the Pacific Northwest innovation, the results were impressive. It continues to evolve as a grassroots initiative, with new community partners linked with top academic leaders and clinical experts from UBC and universities across Canada to provide the best supports to help people get healthier.
Change BC is inspiring. Bringing exercise and diet directly into primary care practice is transformative for health. It's a great model of team-based healthcare that brings together a group of dedicated professionals working with individuals to build stronger and more vibrant, healthy communities.
In terms of preventative healthcare, I don't think I've seen anything more inclusive in the Pacific Northwest in a culturally sensitive way in my entire career.
Indigenous communities have voiced that to improve the health and well-being of communities, we need to address and acknowledge the access to traditional foods and land-based physical activity. Traditional foods such as berries, salmon, seafood, seaweed, wild game, and wild greens are so good for our health, and the harvesting and gathering of these foods is equally as important.
What I think about the Change program that will work for First Nations community is bringing two cultures together to support the one common goal, and that is the health and wellness of everybody. How we get there is our journey. And what Change BC has to offer will empower First Nations communities and mainstream society alike.
What are our patients saying? 100% agreed the Change program was relevant to them, helped them understand their health issues, and that seeing a dietitian and a kinesiologist along with their physician added value for them.
In addition to this, the team provides an ongoing support to patients to ensure that the treatment goals are achieved. Both the testimony from the patient and from the care providers are great. Likewise, the outcome of the program.
In a nutshell, as well as being invited and inviting, it's the personal contact. I really appreciated Dr. Odoh, local physio people, and the young students who were there. And I also appreciated the weekly phone contact with the nutritionist.
The Pacific Northwest Division of Family Practice is delivering some of the best results we've seen across the country. They're innovative and resourceful, and their focus on making the Change program one of the building blocks of primary care in the province is exactly what our communities need. No gimmicks, no fads, and no profits.
I was one of the initial physicians involved in the Change BC program in Northern BC. I loved the Change BC program because I saw it give my patients a sense of control and power over their diseases.
Help us make the Change program available for all of BC. To implement the program in your family practice or see if the program is available in your community, go to the website changebc.net.
Colleen, are we over to Dr. Linton now?
Yes.
So our next slide, Colleen.
And just one moment here.
So while Colleen's getting that ready, there we are. So we've spoken of the 30% risk reduction intervention aimed at Canadians and the cost savings that'll have for the annual health system. Next. And when you look at the cost of implementation of this program in a year, you're looking at a cost per patient of $1,000, which is significantly lower than the cost of diabetes for people with both personally and taking into account the healthcare system. So Change BC is being built into primary care network service plans within the Pacific Northwest region. And this is really where the rubber hits the road, because up until now, and certainly with the infancy of this program in the Pacific Northwest, we've had to rely on gaining access to private funding through grant applications and whatnot. But the long-term goal here is, how do we get this cemented into primary care networks so that we don't have to exist from year to year with grant applications? And that is where preventative health care comes into primary care planning, because the Change program really is just a model of preventative health care that we should be establishing in primary care networks. So we're building partnerships in our primary care network development. We're in wave 1 and 2 in the Pacific Northwest. We have our expressions of interests already stamped and agreed to, and we're working on our service plan implementation. And part of that includes integrating the Change program team approach. And we want to ensure this for all the patients of the Pacific Northwest, vulnerable patients included, with enshrining continuity of care here. So that concludes our talk for you this morning, and we're hopeful that you have some questions, and we're here as a group to answer them for you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. A lot of thankfulness and expressions of that in the chat are coming through. So there aren't too many of us. If people want to pop a question into the chat, or feel free to just take yourself off mute and ask a question. Oh, I see David May has his hand raised. Please go ahead.
Hi there. I mean, this sounds like an amazing program, and I'm really happy to hear about it. Do you have any data now on mortality? A lot of the data that you quoted was surrogate markers, and obviously that is a great idea to have the lowering your LDL, but do we actually have mortality data now?
So I'm going to suggest that, David, this was not part of our data gathering strategy to begin with. I don't know if there's something more globally that Metabolic Syndrome Canada has been looking at, but certainly this is something worth following up for future reference.
And we don't have anything further. We're very much focused on the markers that we're tracking, and definitely as the program gains more traction, we'd love to look at that.
I think, in as much as we don't have data as it has to do with metabolic syndrome as an entity, there are existing, data that is not related to this program in regard to different components of, this disease condition, like in regards to diabetes itself, in regards to, hypertension. So, so I don't know whether, such information will be helpful, to you, like, mortality rates in regard to the different components of this syndrome.
I think what a lot of what we're looking at here as well, David, is quality of life as opposed to mortality rates. So how are we going to quantify that? I think is probably one of the directions that we'd probably be looking at, focusing on more than just mortality rates. Beth, it looks like there's some more questions there.
Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead, Christiane. And then Sheena has her hand up as well.
Well, I just want to start by saying I so enjoyed your presentation. We are working on our expression of interest is submitted for our interior rural CSC, and it has 21 First Nations communities, some majority First Nations communities as well. And so this was just really, we've heard a lot from our nation partners, how much traditional wellness will be an important component of our PCN plan and needing to take that view of prevention. And so I was just curious around a couple of things. So one of them is, okay, like I loved Charlene's presentation on how we need to include traditional wellness in, the exercise plan and the food plan. But I was wondering, was there ever talk of also like including an actual position, like a traditional wellness coordinator or someone who would work specifically with Indigenous patients to look at some of the more, maybe like talk about trauma or understanding of like where the physical manifestations of some of these things are coming from? So that's one thing. And then my second question is just around virtual care. So some of our communities are super remote, may not be, possible to get a kinesiologist, but was a component of your team virtual, or was it all actual in-person visits?
So if I could weigh in on this just to begin with, and I'm sure the rest of the team will have some comments. With respect to the development of the PCNs and elder representatives, I think what we're trying to do with the PCN is allow for some of these positions in general, like elder representatives, or I'm not sure exactly the different terms that we're going to be using. So they're not going to be specifically just tailored for the change program, but the change program is going to be part of their job description, if you will, part of it. And then with respect to the virtual side of things, we've seen with COVID how important virtual care is, and particularly in the Pacific Northwest with so many remote areas to reach. Part of the standard of care delivery will be virtual care. There's no way that we can get away from that. But we will see as part of that too, a face-to-face component. So it'll be both a blend of face-to-face and virtual care that we're looking at.
Thank you, Charlene here. In terms of First Nation position, we have our traditional healers, traditional medicine people, and for those of you venturing further into including First Nations perspective, you're going to see that each community is going to be different and unique, but also when we look at our communities, I know who in Kitsumkalum I can go to help me to gather medicine, to help me, and how our traditional medicine is done. It's not like, oh, they're in Monday, I can go see them Monday. It could be Sunday, it could be Saturday, it could be Thursday evening. And it's going to sit with the elders. It's not like, it's not a paid position, so to speak. And you will find that in your areas too. There are certain people that people trust or are getting to know that will go to them to either 1, get medicine, 2, get direction, or 3, just support them in how they're changing their diet and what's working and what's not working. I got self-disclosure here. I got diagnosed with osteoarthritis. So I've been using my traditional medicine to help me with pain management. But I knew who to go to in the community. So it's not always, don't let that limit you, is what I'm saying. Don't let that limit you to a paid position. When you incorporate, pull on any strengths that the elders or community members can bring in, pull on those strengths. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Charlene. I'm looking at the chat here, comment around reaching children, and thanks, Tamara, for just noting that you've also started to address metabolic syndrome in pediatric populations in the Pacific Northwest. Kathy has a question. I want us to support this program here at HDC. Submitted internally a request for measuring prevalence of metabolic syndrome using the criteria published and shown earlier. Beyond this, are there other clinical measures that would be helpful to know to support this program with EMR data?
So if I can just weigh in here quickly, Tamara, who's also on the call here, has been a real find for our program in the Pacific Northwest, because she has developed a dashboard that can be utilized in various EMRs to identify not only those people with metabolic syndrome, but also with some of the other parameters that we're looking at for the rehab side of this program. And maybe Tamara can speak quickly to some of this.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm just going to stay off video. So we specifically have created a dashboard for MedAccess to view your prevalence of your patients in your panel that meet the 3 out of the 5 criteria. And then we also have 2 other dashboards that you can utilize in MedAccess for identifying patients, kind of broadening that view of who might benefit from participation in the program. So folks with type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and also those who have had a heart event as well can participate in some aspects of rehab. The other practice support coaches have worked along with me to develop reports for other EMRs, such as MOAS and IntraHealth as well, to find the same results. So, if you wanted to look into that in your own practice, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Great. And my apologies, I wasn't sure if I missed you, Sheena. Did you take your hand down or?
I did take it down. It's pretty similar to Christiane's comment there. I see that it seems like a really great program. I just see a lot of kind of barriers for First Nation communities when it comes to the in-person visits and just the sheer amount of follow-up needed, because there already are so many of those social determinants that led to the diseases. And then how do we address those issues to kind of assist them in following this program? It just seems like kind of a big undertaking for a population that already struggles with that.
Hi, I'd like to weigh in here if you don't mind. I love this. Sorry, I'm multitasking here. We don't let barriers. Let's see a barrier. Let's address it and take that down. So what we did was we connected with our First Nations communities and connected with their community health reps or their support people that they have in place, and they are our link to the communities. I do recognize a lot of communities do have technology challenging issues, Wi-Fi connection. Like me this morning, I'm still not getting emails. So, and I'm 3 kilometers from Terrace. So, but I don't rely on that. I pick up my phone or I pick up the other phone. So I don't let that be a barrier to stop me. So what we did was we reached out to the nations and asked them, who can we pull in their community to be the best resource to connect them with and it could be the school teacher, it could be the principal, it could be the community health rep, whoever they have identified. We link up with them, we connect with them, not only from Change BC, but from nation to nation. I've been doing some connection work with the Tahltans, the Nisga'a, the Haisla, Haida Gwaii, Queen Charlotte Islands. So don't let a barrier scare us. Let a barrier be that valley we just crossed over. Sorry, I talk with my hands a lot. Thanks, guys. So what I did to help with the chronic illness, I pulled in my NADAP counselor, our Brighter Futures worker, and our community health rep. And an opportunity had shown itself to us in Kitsumkalum to train the trainer model for chronic illness and pain management. And so I got those three trained, and NADAP, because, you know, when you're dealing with addictions, you know, this is pain management is definitely, we need to address that. The Brighter Futures roles and responsibilities for from 0 to 100 to advocate and to support the members. And then the community health rep is injury prevention and awareness, right? So I pulled those three in, and what they did is they would do 2 6-week sessions with people who have signed up for the chronic pain management and help them. And then from there, they link them to the pharmacist, to the doctor, to OT, PT, or wherever their doctor has a directive. So take a barrier and let's take it down. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Charlene. I don't want to cut this short. And so if the presenters are willing to stay on and keep asking questions, I think let's do that. I do want to I just flag that it's, we're about 10 minutes past our session end time. So those of you who do need to step out for something else or take a break, please feel free to do that. Christiane, your hand is raised. Is that from before or another question? Perhaps from another question. Put it open to the group. Any other thoughts or questions for our presenters?
Okay, I just want to add to, this is Onuora. I just want to add to what Sharon said about the barrier. And this is, you know, the reason why, you know, this program is being, you know, developed to be a grassroots program, like in a community base and a family physician. Meaning that, you know, even in those remote areas, as long as this patient is attached to a family physician, you know, there is, you know, opportunity for the patient to be identified and for the patient to be, you know, benefit from the program. So it's not something that is being developed in the city and is being communicated, you know, down to the grassroots. You know, it's something that, you know, we are building from, you know, the community level, and then, you know, seeing how we can benefit, the community can benefit. Like, the family physician knows the community, he knows, you know, the resources that is available, and he knows how to adapt these resources, you know, to be able to overcome these barriers and, you know, making it, you know, possible for people to participate. He knows who to pull into the program, and he knows, you know, when it was better and the season when it was better, you know, for those persons to be pulled into it. I also want to mention, you know, during the pilot program, somebody asked about the virtual component. We actually have, you know, the virtual component right from the onset, because we have a large land mass in our region. So it's really difficult, you know, for a dietitian to travel across, you know, community to communities. So what we did is that, you know, components, you know, most of, you know, some of the dietitian, you know, approaches we are more of virtual. You know, you meet patient for the assessment, then you can follow up with the patient, you know, over the phone, over the Zoom and stuff like that. So that was even before Zoom becomes much more popular. So we are a bit ahead of time, and we thought about these barriers. It has to do with, you know, the distance and, you know, the topography. And we incorporated it, you know, right from the onset, you know, from the pilot, you know, stage. And another thing that was very helpful is, you know, our partnership with UBC. So Dr. Boushel was really good in sending down students from the kinesiology department. So we have, you know, student placements to the community that came and spent a couple of weeks. So they were there to provide this exercise advice and exercise supervision to the participants. So that was really cool in the sense that people were able to build relationship, and the student is available there all the time, trying to make things work out based on the patient's time and schedule. So they had in an hand-on a kind of care provision. And that was also an opportunity for them to work with family physicians. So all these, PCN is trying to see how we can get other, professionals to be part of, clinic. So the students started having an experience, how a kinesiologist can work with a family physician, when to talk with a family physician about the patient, what are the red flags and stuff like that, which is very important in care provision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Odoh.
Can I just follow up on a comment from earlier from the Health Data Coalition, Kathy McGinnis? And that is the importance of identifying the prevalence data in your region with your primary care network development. Because if you have some idea of the numbers of people that you're dealing with, then you'll be able to put into your budgets for your PCNs the number of people potentially that you'll require in terms of kinesiologists and dietitians, or perhaps healers or elders. Perhaps this is going to go beyond that, as Charlene suggested, and maybe there's going to be a volunteer component there as well. But just for dealing with PCN budgets, you're going to have to know the prevalence of these conditions in your PCNs in order to get started with that type of planning. Thanks.
So I'll just jump back in here real quick. I had an aha moment. So Dr. Linton was talking about volunteering. So what we've done in Kitsumkalum and some of the communities you'll find throughout the north here, we've been inviting our traditional healers and medicine gatherers to do workshops, but I hesitate to say workshops. They come in and they teach us how to gather, what to gather, when to gather, and how to prepare it. That's why I asked you guys, if you're at farmer's market or at the health food store, at Overweighty, or God forbid anywhere else like that, where they're selling Indian medicine, I caution you not to do that. And the reason being is, I'll talk a little bit about this, and thank you for indulging me. So when we gather our medicine, we put the intention into the plants. We put the intention into the roots and to the wildlife. We put good intentions. And so we invite our traditional healers to come in and teach us their knowledge so that we walk away, we can make these medicines. And we know, we're taught that I can't mass produce this Indian medicine and sell it to you because this was made specifically for me. I could do more harm to you by doing that. And consciously, you don't see First Nations people out there selling their Ooligan grease for medicine or Devil's Club, because the medicine is made for the intention of you. And the reason I'm saying that is that when I look at the change program and look at the volunteerism, and I'm sorry, this is just how I see my world. Coming here and making this presentation is with good intentions, and pulling and the resources that you have to offer to help us strengthen what we need to do will only benefit the big picture, and that is the health and wellness of the humankind. So think of that when you look at with your PCN and how you're going to pull budget or pull a position for a traditional healer. Try to avoid words like traditional healer on file. Let's do coordinate, linkage. Let's link them, that we're coordinating them with them, because we're taught not to get paid for this. for me to get this Indian medicine, for example, I bartered with our traditional foods. So, and the reason I'm sharing all this and how we pull this together, we believe in this. We know this is work. It dates back hundreds of years from our ancestors, as you've seen in the image from Russia and the First Nations communities, that this works. This works. And thank you for hearing and indulging me to talk and to share this, but don't let that hesitate you. So I just caution about like traditional healers on payroll, because you're going to scare the people away, because we're taught not to do that. If that sheds any light. Thank you.
It does, for sure. Thank you, Charlene. I think that's some really practical advice for implementing, and how really, like you spoke about in the video, to kind of bring two cultures together to deliver a program and community that works for people. Looking at the time, I want to make sure everyone gets a break. Thank you so much to all our presenters. It was amazing to have the five of you share each share kind of your perspectives and your pieces of this great work that's kind of happening all around us here in Northwest BC. Colleen, did you want to say any last words before we wrap up this session?
Oh, just to say thank you so much for the opportunity to share, and really appreciate everyone's time, and thank you to the presenters. Incredible hearing everyone's words, for sure.